Welcome to Holistic Accountant Podcast, where we aim to showcase how adopting a holistic approach in accounting and tax maximizes value for clients. Beyond traditional tasks like preparing financial statements and tax returns, a holistic accountant focuses on offering advice that maximizes personal wealth on an after-tax basis. If you enjoy this episode, please consider leaving a rating and sharing it with those who might also benefit. And to ensure you stay updated, subscribe to our weekly email. The link is in the show notes. Okay, today Mena and I would like to talk about sort of the changing face of the accounting industry. And, I realise this is not an accounting industry podcast, but, it's something that Mena and I talk about quite a lot and reflect on. And I think it has wide-ranging implications, particularly on the end user, that is you, the business person, to sort of understand what's going on in the accounting industry or how that industry might change. And we feel like if you can get in front of it, you're potentially going to benefit substantially from this change, because I think probably everyone wins if we're correct in terms of what we expect the industry to do or how we expect the industry to change. And so whilst it might feel like, who cares about the accounting industry? And fair enough, we actually think that it's worthwhile talking about so that, you can kind of learn and make sure that you choose the right accountant, that you've got the right holistic accountant on your team.
So I'll probably start with just a brief introduction as to what accountants were doing about 20 years ago. And unfortunately, probably there's some out there that probably still do this.
Yeah.
So back 20 years ago, obviously everything was manual, it was really paper-driven. Software wasn't as frequently used. There were far less regulation and rules. The data matching that the ATO currently have was non-existent. Now we know that the ATO has data feeds into certain banks, and there's talk about them going data matching with managing agents of rental properties and so forth. So there's a lot more publicly available information than what it was about 20 years ago. So the ATO has got the ability to cross-check data from a lot of different sources. Of course, it's in their best interest to do so to ensure that no one's avoiding tax and so forth. And also with the introduction of podcasts and the internet and even AI, there's a lot of information that's readily available for business owners. Also a lot of noise, but there's a lot of information that's readily available. 20 years ago, it just wasn't, the role of an accountant was pretty mundane. It was basically a paper pusher who just prepared compliance.
Yeah, that's right. And it's changed a lot, which means that where accountants are spending their time is changing as well. And it's been incremental change, because really, it's not until you reflect and think about, well, what would we be doing 20 years ago? Do you realise how much it has changed? Our view then is that the accounting profession's going to need to change to be more advisors than accountants, which, it could be still tax advice, but in terms of sitting down, preparing reconciliations, inputting amounts in tax returns, completing schedules, doing those sorts of calculations. If you think about AI and automation, data flows, all these sorts of things, that should become less and less. It will never get to zero, and there's only so much you can trust AI. AI is fantastic, of course, and it can do a lot of things, but you still need that human on the other end of it, because there's always idiosyncrasies and nuances with a lot of tax-related matters, and AI is never going to be able to do it all. But as automation starts to cannibalise some of the work that accountants do, they're going to need to find a role. And that's kind of where you, the end user, can win, because if you're going to deal with a firm that kind of understands that's where it's all heading, then what you have to do as an accounting firm is you've got to invest in your team. Because the person that prepares an Excel spreadsheet and then drops those numbers into a tax return isn't going to necessarily be able to turn around and give advice or give more holistic advice or, take a longer term view on some of these matters. They might be great technically and they might be great, just mechanically in terms of doing those sorts of things, but you really need a different person in order to do that. And so our view is that if we're going to be a firm that's going to thrive over the next decade, we need to fully embrace as much automation as possible. Having said that, I'm going to put a big asterisk on that in terms of acknowledging that it's not going to do everything and you can't 100% trust it. But what you can do is get some efficiencies. So embrace that. embrace the technology that goes along with it and all the tools, but then also make sure you invest in your team so that if I'm usually spend 3 hours doing a certain amount of work and I can use technology to do that work in an hour, well then maybe I could put my pen down, sit back and have a look at the situation, ask myself, if I was in this client's shoes, what would I do? What does this data tell us? How can we help our client improve their business? And I think that's really where the great outcome could be is, and again, particularly if you're dealing with the right team, they're going to have so much more scope and insight potentially, and AI can potentially help with that insight as well. And, that's going to be a great benefit.
So what does this mean for you as a business owner? From my perspective, I think business owners are going to be the greatest beneficiaries of all this because as Stuart mentioned, your accountants are going to become more advisors than, as what I referred to before, paper pushers. So as long as they're embracing technology and you're also embracing technology, your business won't die. You'll continue to thrive. They'll be continue looking for avenues to find efficiencies, not with only in their business, but your business also. An accountant that's across technology and the benefits of technology and the available resources that's out there will provide you with recommendations to utilize within your business so that your business can become more efficient, you can be more proactive, and you be on the front foot when it comes to, not only your compliance work and obligations, but in terms of growing your overall business.
So that's exactly why we thought it was worthwhile talking about and highlighting, because again, as we've said many times, we think if you choose the right team, that's going to have a tremendous impact. And really that's the common theme really over the last, ever since I finished university, is the common theme from people is I want more proactive advice from my accountant. It's okay to pay compliance fees. It's a necessity of business. I sort of compare it to paying insurance premiums. You kind of need to do it, but you don't get a lot of value from it necessarily. And this gives us an opportunity to create much more value than obviously that we charge. And as Mena said, the greatest beneficiaries of that will be the end client. Okay, well that's it for us for today. Until next week. Bye for now.